నమస్కారం. డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ విద్యార్థిని విద్యార్థులకు స్వాగతం. ఈనాటి కార్యక్రమంలో కామర్స్ విద్యార్థుల కోసం డిప్రిసియేషన్ అకౌంటింగ్ అనే పాఠం ప్రసారమవుతుంది.
Hello students, the title of the lesson is Depreciation Accounting. It is meant for BCom second year students. It is also useful to MBA first year students. This is covered in accounting course of BCom second year and accounting for management course of MBA first year. In this lesson, I will explain the meaning of depreciation, the causes of depreciation and the need for charging depreciation in the books of accounts, and also how to calculate the depreciation and how the depreciation is recorded in the books of accounts. We need certain things to lead our day to day life like furniture, TV set, a house, a vehicle and so on. In the same manner, the business firm also requires certain things to do its business. The things that are required by the business are buildings, plant and machinery, vehicles, cash, stock, etc. These things are the assets owned by the business. Business firms expend huge amounts on acquiring these assets. That means these assets involve cost to the business. The amount spent on acquiring these assets are treated as the value of the assets. As these assets are used in the business, their value decreases. The decrease or fall or the diminution in the value of the assets is known as depreciation. Different words are used to denote the meaning of depreciation for different types of assets. The assets can be broadly classified into fixed assets, current assets. Fixed assets can be further classified into tangible assets and intangible assets, and these tangible assets can be further classified into wasting assets and other than wasting assets. Fixed assets are the long lived assets. They are not meant for sale, they are meant for providing goods and services to the customers. Current assets are the assets which can be converted into cash within 1 year. Examples for fixed assets are buildings, plant and machinery, furniture, vehicles, and examples for current assets are cash, book debts, stock, etc. The tangible assets can be further classified into wasting assets and assets other than wasting. Wasting assets are the natural resources like coal mines, oil wells, etc. To denote the fall in the value of wasting assets, we use the term depletion. In the case of other physical assets, that is other than wasting assets, we use the word depreciation, and intangible assets do not have any physical appearance, they cannot be seen. For example, trademarks, goodwill, patents, copyrights, etc. The cost of the intangible assets is to be written off over the estimated life of these assets. For this purpose, we use the term amortization. Fixed assets are used in the business for the purpose of generating revenues, and in this process they lose their value. The portion of the cost of the assets or the value of the assets which is lost must be recovered from the revenues generated in that particular accounting year. For this purpose, the portion of the fixed assets which is lost must be allocated to the year in which they are used. The allocation of the portion of the fixed assets to a particular accounting year is known as depreciation, and it is charged to the profit and loss account. That means, it is debited to the profit and loss account. Having seen the meaning of depreciation, let us see what are the causes for depreciation. The first cause is use or consumption. When the fixed assets are used in the business, as we have seen already, they lose their value. In the same manner, in the case of wasting assets like oil wells, coal mines, quarries, their value will be decreasing as the resources are extracted from those assets. Coming to the second cause, that is passage of time. Certain assets will have limited legal life. For example, leasehold assets, copyrights, trademarks, etc. As the time passes, the value of these assets will decrease. Coming to the third cause, that is obsolescence. Due to the technological developments in the market, new models of machines come to the market. As such, the existing assets will become obsolete, outdated. Hence, the existing assets will lose their value. Coming to the fourth cause, that is other factors. Fixed assets like buildings and machinery are exposed to the nature, that is wind, rain, sun, because of which their value will be coming down in the form of rust, rot, etc. Having seen the causes for depreciation, let us see why at all depreciation is provided in the books of accounts. Having seen the causes of depreciation, let us see why at all depreciation is charged in the books of accounts, that is the need for charging depreciation. The first need is to allocate the depreciable cost. Depreciable cost is the cost of the asset which is to be allocated over its useful life. Then, to ascertain true and fair profit or loss, the purpose of preparing profit and loss account is to ascertain the correct net profit or net loss. Unless we take into account the depreciation, we will not be in a position to calculate true and fair profit or loss. The third objective for charging the depreciation is to show true and fair view of the financial position. For this purpose, we prepare balance sheet. Unless and until we show the assets in the balance sheet at their correct values, we will not be showing the true and fair view of the financial position. So, here by charging the depreciation, by deducting the depreciation, only the unexpired portion of the assets are shown in the balance sheet. Then the fourth need is to compute tax liability. The tax liability here means income tax liability. Income tax liability is calculated on the net profit. In order to calculate the correct net profit, depreciation, which is an expense, has to be taken into account. So, for that purpose, by showing the depreciation as an expense, we calculate the net profit, and on that we calculate the tax liability of the business firm. Then provide for replacement. The assets which have limited life, at the end of their life they have to be replaced by new assets. For this purpose, by charging the depreciation, the funds generated by sales are retained in the business, and these funds are reinvested and used in the business, and at the end of the life of the asset, these funds will be used for the purpose of buying new asset. Coming to the last objective behind charging depreciation, that is to determine the cost of the product. We have seen already depreciation is an expense, it is included in the production cost. Thus, in order to determine the correct cost of the product, the depreciation is to be included in that, and this is very important for the managers to take a decision in fixing the price of the final product. Having discussed the theory part relating to depreciation, now let us see how depreciation is accounted for in the books of accounts. This is known as treatment of depreciation in books of accounts. Two methods are there for treating depreciation in the books of accounts, that is method 1 and method 2. In the method 1, depreciation is charged to asset account directly. In the methods of treatment of depreciation, we will be covering the accounting treatment when asset is purchased, and the accounting treatment when depreciation is charged, and accounting treatment when the asset is sold. So, now let us see in the first method, when the asset is purchased, assets comes into the business, and if at all it is cash purchase, cash will be going out. These two are real accounts, and the accounting rule is debit what comes in and credit what goes out. When the asset is purchased, asset account is debited, and at the end of the year, when depreciation is to be charged, depreciation is credited to asset account. And thus, in the first year, after this depreciation is charged, we show the closing balance, that is by balance carried down, and this will be the opening balance for the next year. When the asset is sold, naturally the same accounting rule applicable to real accounts is to be applied, that is when the asset is sold, bank comes in and asset goes out. Then the asset account is credited with the bank, and when the asset is sold, naturally there may be either loss or profit. When the selling price is more than the book value of the asset, there will be a profit, otherwise it results in loss. And if at all it is loss, and this loss has to be debited, and asset account is to be credited. Thus, we have credited the loss on sale of asset account to the asset account, and this loss on sale of asset account will be transferred to profit and loss account. In the balance sheet, the asset appears at its value in the beginning of the year, and from this we have to subtract the depreciation charged during the year. Thus, the unexpired portion of the asset is shown in the balance sheet. And coming to the second method, in the second method we will not be directly charging the depreciation to the asset account, but a separate account known as provision for depreciation account is opened, and depreciation is credited to provision for depreciation account. And again at the end of the second year, if we assume in the same manner that the asset is sold, then this in the second year also we charge the depreciation, and we credit the depreciation to the provision for depreciation account, and this total balance in the provision for depreciation account at the end of the second year, when the asset is sold, it will be transferred to the asset account. When the asset is purchased, the asset account is debited with bank account, and with the same balance it is carried down, and it has become the opening balance in the second year. And when the asset is sold, bank comes in, and the bank account is debited and asset account is credited. That means to asset account we credited the bank account, and again if the loss is there on sale, again that is when the selling price is less than the book value, it results in loss, and that loss will be credited to the asset account, and this loss will be transferred to the profit and loss account. In the balance sheet, always the asset will be appearing at its original cost, and from this original cost every year the total depreciation that is accumulated, the total amount of depreciation that is accumulated in the provision for depreciation account will be deducted, and thus the unexpired portion of the asset will be shown in the balance sheet. Of these two methods, we will be using only the first method, that is charging the depreciation directly to the asset account in our lesson. Different methods are available for calculating depreciation. Before we go to the discussion of these methods, let us discuss about the basic factors which influence the amount of depreciation. Those factors are original cost, scrap value, expected life and effective date. We have already seen the fixed assets will have cost. The cost is the price paid for acquiring the assets. Then what is original cost? Original cost of the asset includes even the capitalized expenses such as transportation cost, insurance cost, erection charges, which are incurred at the time of buying and erecting the assets in the plant. Then scrap value. We have already seen the fixed assets, though they are long lived, they have limited life. At the end of the life, they become useless for the business purpose and they have to be discarded. If we sell these assets in the market, they will fetch some value, some amount they fetch, that amount we call it as scrap value. At the time of calculating depreciation, this scrap value also must be taken into account. Then expected life. The life of the assets is estimated in terms of number of years for buildings and other assets, and in terms of number of hours in the case of machinery, etc. Then effective date. The depreciation is calculated at the end of the accounting period. So, if the asset is purchased and installed in the business on the first day of the accounting year, then naturally we calculate depreciation for 12 months. If the date of purchase and date of installation, that is the date of use, are different, we have to calculate depreciation from the date of use only. For calculating depreciation from this original cost, see, from this we have to deduct scrap value. Then if we divide by number of years, we get the annual depreciation. So, for calculating depreciation, there are different methods are available. The first method is fixed installment method. This method is also known as straight line method. The name of the method itself is showing that the depreciation is fixed. And when we come to the diminishing balance methods, and the name of the method itself is showing that the depreciation is diminishing. Under this method, three methods are there: written down value method, sum of years digits method, double declining method. Now, we will discuss in this lesson only the first two methods, that is fixed installment method, diminishing balance methods, and remaining methods of depreciation will be covered in another lesson. Now, let us take fixed installment method and see how depreciation is calculated. Cost plus erection charges minus scrap value divided by number of years. For explaining this method, let us take one example. Machinery is purchased on 1/1/1995 for rupees 1 lakh. Erection charges are rupees 10,000. Expected life of the machinery in years is 5. The scrap value, expected scrap value is nil. Now, if we apply this formula, the cost will be the 1 lakh. For calculating the original cost, the erection charges we have to add, then deduct the scrap value. Scrap value is nil, that is 0, and if we divide by 5, we will get the depreciation 22,000. And since the life of the asset is 5 years, at the end of the 5th year, the asset value will become 0 in this method. Coming to the Second method, that is written down value method. As we have seen, in this method the rate of depreciation will be the same, but it will be calculated on the written down value of the asset, that is cost minus depreciation charged during the year. In the first year, if we calculate depreciation for the same example, in the first year the cost will be 1,10,000, that is cost plus erection charges, and on this the rate is the same rate. We have taken the same 20% rate. At the rate of 20% on 1,10,000, in the first year the depreciation comes to 22,000. Now let us also assume that this particular asset, that is machinery, is sold on 1/7/1997 for rupees 60,000, and for the third year also we can calculate depreciation under this written down value method. In the third year the machine is used only for 6 months, that is from 1/1/1997 to 1/7/1997. Now let us see how machinery account is prepared under these two methods. For this purpose we are following the first method of treatment of depreciation, which we have explained already. The machinery is purchased on 1st January for rupees 1 lakh, and rupees 10,000 is spent as erection charges. During the first year the depreciation charged is 22,000, that is 20% on 1,10,000. The opening balance for the second year, that is on January 1st, is 88,000. The depreciation in the second year also is 22,000, and the balance carried down at the end of the second year is 66,000. This will be the opening balance for the third year, that is on January 1st, 1997. During 1997 the asset, that is the machinery, is sold on 1/7/1997 for rupees 60,000. That means in the third year the machinery is used only for 6 months. Thus in the third year the depreciation will be half of the 22,000, that is only for 6 months. And on 1st July machinery was sold for 60,000. On the sale of this machinery there is a profit of rupees 5,000 is debited to machinery account, and later on it will be transferred to profit and loss account. And let us see how we have arrived at this profit. As we have seen already, profit is equal to selling price minus book value. Book value on 1st July is 55,000, that is 66,000, and depreciation provided during the year for 6 months is 11,000, that is 55,000. That means the machinery worth of rupees 55,000 is sold for 60,000, thus there is a profit of 5,000. Coming to the second method, that is written down value method. In the first year, as we have seen, the depreciation will be the same, that is 20% on the original cost of the asset, that is on 1,10,000. In the second year the opening balance will be the 88,000. In the second year we calculate depreciation at the rate of 20%, not on original cost but on 88,000 only, that is the opening balance on the first day of the year. So thus we have calculated the depreciation, that is 17,600. At the end of the second year the balance in the asset will be 70,400, and this will be the opening balance for the third year, that is 70,400. And again the machine here also is used for only 6 months, and for 6 months at the rate of 20% on 70,400 depreciation comes to 7,040. Thus in the case of written down value method there is a loss on sale of the asset, but the example is the same. It is because in the case of written down value method the book value of the asset is more than the selling price. The book value is 63,360, that is 70,400 minus depreciation provided for 6 months, that is 7,040. It comes to 63,360. That means as on 1st July 1997, the worth of the machinery is 63,360, but it is sold for 60,000. Thus, there is a loss of 3,360, and this loss will be credited to the asset account, and later on it will be transferred to the profit and loss account. So far, we have seen how depreciation is calculated under fixed installment method and written down value method. Now, we will see the calculation of depreciation under the remaining two methods, that is sum of years digits method and double declining method. Under the sum of years digits method, the formula for calculating annual depreciation is cost to be written off, that is depreciable cost, into number of remaining years including current year divided by sum of the years. Thus, in the first year, if we take the same example, the depreciation will be 36,667. The cost of the machine to be depreciated into 5. In the first year, the number of years to go will be 5 years divided by 15 years, that is sum of years, that is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. Thus, we get depreciation 36,667. In the second year, the cost to be depreciated will be the same, but a fraction is decreasing. That is the reason why the depreciation also is decreasing. In the second year, the depreciation to be written off is 29,333, and so on. Coming to the double declining method, as already we have seen, in the double declining method, the straight line method will be doubled, and it will be calculated, that is depreciation will be calculated on the value of the asset at the beginning of the year. Thus, in this example, the straight line rate of depreciation is 20% and it will be doubled, then it will become 40%. In the first year, the cost to be depreciated is 1,10,000, and on this 1,10,000 we calculate depreciation at the rate of 40%, it comes to 44,000. In the next year, that is in the second year, the rate will be the same, that is double of the straight line, but the amount on which we calculate will be reducing. Opening balance on the first day of the second year will be 66,000. On this 66,000, at the rate of 40% we calculate depreciation, it comes to 26,400. In this lesson, we have explained in detail the theoretical aspects relating to depreciation, that is meaning of the depreciation, causes of depreciation, need for charging depreciation, and factors influencing the depreciation. And we have also seen how depreciation is accounted in the books of accounts, that is how depreciation is shown in the books of accounts, and different methods for calculating depreciation.
ఈ పాఠ్యాంశాలపై మీ అభిప్రాయాలను సలహాలను మాకు తెలియజేయవలసిన చిరునామా: డైరెక్టర్, ఆడియో విజువల్ ప్రొడక్షన్ అండ్ రీసెర్చ్ సెంటర్, డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ, ప్రొఫెసర్ జి రామ్రెడ్డి మార్క్, రోడ్ నెంబర్ 46, జూబ్లీ హిల్స్, హైదరాబాద్ 500033.
The case method of learning has become very popular in management education. The legacy of the case method of learning has bequeathed from American business schools and more particularly the Harvard Business School. Cases are very widely used in most of the business schools in providing management education. Because of the benefits associated with the case method, even in developing countries, the utility is recognized and business education teachers are making use of this distinctive learning tool. Let us first know the different methods of learning in management education. Lecture, group discussion, syndicate method, business game, role playing, solve structured problems and case method are the important methods that are being used in management education. Let us now define what a case is. A case refers to a real life organizational situation requiring the decision maker to solve a problem or to decide upon an important matter. Cases are the partly ordered reality. They are developed around job situations. The cases are useful to the learners to experience different organizational situations. The analytical skills required for the managerial jobs would be developed, and the skill development and analytical abilities are the important objectives of making use of the case method. According to Andrew R. Towle, who was the director of case research at Harvard, the case provides opportunity for the use of conceptual scheme, skill, orientation and relationships to sharpen the questions new situations demand. Through the case method, the student learns in several ways. He learns the process of analysis, that is, to marshal the facts, to sift the chaff from the grain, to identify problems, to pick out the problem that needs priority in decision making, to look at the alternatives available for action, to weigh the alternatives and their consequences, and finally, to choose the right alternative, in other words, to decide. Dr. Lowell, who was president of Harvard University, the mecca of the case method, once said, "There is only one thing that will train the human mind, and that is the voluntary use of the mind by the man himself. You may aid him, you may guide him, you may suggest to him, and above all, you may inspire him, but the only thing worth having is that which he gets by his own efforts, and what he gets is in direct proportion to what he puts into it." Let us now examine the distinctions between the lecture method and the case method. The lecture method is structured, whereas the case method is unstructured. I mean that the lecture is sequential and the teacher prepares on a concept and then goes and presents in sequence to provide necessary conceptual knowledge to the students. Whereas, in the case of case method, unstructured is the important feature, that the teacher has to moderate and demonstrate the case in the classroom by providing only clues, and the discussion is open ended. Lecture method is teacher oriented and case method is learner oriented, and knowledge generation is the important objective or outcome through lecture method. Skill development is the outcome of the case method. As all of us know, conceptual skills are provided through case method, Analytical skills would be provided through the case method. Individual learning takes place in the lecture situation, and active group learning would take place through case method. The next aspect for discussion is types of cases. Simons classified the cases into different types. They are the exercise case, the situation case, the complex case, the decision case, the in-tray case, the critical incident case, the sequential case, and the role play case. Let me now examine the benefits of the case method. As I mentioned earlier, there are many benefits derived by the learners by participating in the case discussion. Cases promote thinking faculty and fosters creativity. Cases help making a student an active learner. Cases enable the use of concepts in decision making and problem solving situations. Cases facilitate two-way communication. Cases provide an opportunity to experience different organizational situations. In other words, case discussion helps the participants to develop the quality of empathy, to enable themselves to place themselves in the situations of the decision maker in the case. Cases develop and sharpen analytical skills among the students. Cases also help formulating action plans and also thinking the implementation strategies therein. The next important aspect is process of case analysis. It is necessary to observe certain steps while we take up the case analysis. The first step in the case analysis is scanning the case. Here the students are required to go through the case and try to remember all the facts, events, opinions, data given in the case. The second important step is get out facts, events, actors, etc. Actors here refer to the roles or characters covered in the case under discussion. The third important step is identifying the feelings, opinions and prejudices of the actors in the case. And next step is identifying the points of view of different actors, that is the persons involved in the case situation. And last is establishing organization and its relationship patterns. Before we go into the details of how a case should be discussed and what the methodology is, let us know what we mean by case method. While it is easy to define what a case is, it is very difficult to define precisely what a case method is, but we can describe what a case method is. To put it simply, a case method is the method of handling a case by a teacher. Broadly, there are two categories of organizing or leading a case. Number one is guided discussion method, where all the participants will take part in the discussion. The case leader or teacher would moderate and guide the students. The teacher would never give the clues, would never suggest any measures, would never give the solutions, or would not give any decisions. He promotes thinking, facilitates discussion, try to get the latent talent and creativity among the participants by inviting their opinions, and it should be like a brainstorming session. Never he gives the final decision, and the teacher and students should remember that every case has more than one solution, and no solution can be said to be the best solution. It depends on how they argue in favor of a particular alternative. It is highly a democratic kind of process of decision making, and a consensus will be arrived under this guided discussion method. The teacher's role is very predominant in providing necessary direction, guidance, and providing a fillip for discussion among the participants, and to get out the best out of the abilities of the students. It is here that the creativity of the students will be known, the creative thinking is possible, the discipline and sharpening abilities will be developed among the students through this skill of organizing the cases. In this context, let us recall the words of Andrew R. Towle. The creative evidence of learning is asking questions. Case discussion provides for an opportunity to the students to put questions and develop their creative ability. The methodology of case discussion. The points I would give now would help us to recall the decision making process outlined by Peter F. Drucker, the so called rational or sound decision making process. All of us, the students of management, are aware that Peter F. Drucker identified 5 important stages in the decision making process. We know that the first step is identification of problem, second step is diagnosing the problem, the third is developing alternative courses of action, the fourth is selecting the best alternative, and the last one is implementation, follow up and feedback. These stages would help any manager to take decisions in a sequential and on sound lines. The guidelines or stages provided by Peter F. Drucker for decision making would be reflected in the methodology of case discussion. Let us now look at the case discussion methodology step by step. The first step is recapitulation of the business background in the case. The second is determination of the problem or problems. The third is listing of alternatives available. Fourth one is cataloging of the information for the choice of an alternative, and the last is choosing an alternative and examining fully the implications. I would like to mention that every student should prepare well for the case discussion. We all know that the cases should be given to the students much before the case discussion takes place. The students must go through the case as many number of times required to remember the facts, events, opinions, data, and prejudices of different actors provided in the case. Minimum 5 to 6 times reading the case becomes necessary to equip themselves with all the facts, as the facts are very important and relevant in the case discussion. The facts should be remembered by them, and while arguing with their peers, facts must be very handy. They keep all the information readily for argument, and hence it is a recapitulation of the business background in the case. That is the first point that the students should remember. The success of case discussion depends on the case itself, the case, its content, the coverage, the conceptual aspects linked to the case, and so on. The second is the students and their preparation, the degree of preparation and their ability to participate in the case discussion is the second important factor that contributes for the success of case method. The third important role is that of case instructor or case leader, the teacher. The success or failure of the case depends on these three, that is the case itself, the students and the case leader. An action plan is to be prepared ultimately at the end of the case discussion. What can be done to prepare an action plan? There is a need to get out a range of possibilities, to indicate circumstances and the appropriate options, to discuss the costs and the benefits, not only the cost and benefit analysis, it is also necessary to analyze the implications and the consequences of the decision suggested, and lastly to discuss the proposals with the points of view of various actors. Actors here again the persons or roles involved in the case. What should be assessed by a case leader? The case leader is required to make an assessment before he really takes up case discussion. The factors to be assessed by the case leader are an individual's level of preparation, the group's identification of problems, the study of the data made by the group, the kind of value judgments, if any, in a decision, the depth of exploring various alternatives open to the group, the nature and process of final decision. There are certain prerequisites required to a teacher. Number one is the facts of the case. Number two is the goals of the participants. Next is general strategy of the participant and building up of relevant conceptual input. Lastly, framing questions to guide and stimulate the participants. The teacher has to remember that the case method would become much more useful and value added in the teaching mechanism when he integrates the concepts to the case. There is a need on the part of a teacher to provide necessary list of readings covering different concepts which are required for case discussion. The case leader has to observe certain principles while discussing the case. There are certain do's as also certain don'ts to see that the case is very successfully used. Let us see what they could be. First, there are certain things which the teacher should not do. What are they? The teachers should not use case to demonstrate their pet ideas or theories. The teachers under any circumstances should not insult the student. The teachers should not overstructure the discussion. If it is overstructured, the democracy principle of case discussion would be defeated. And more important is, the teacher should not be authoritarian. As it is necessary to remember certain don'ts, maybe it is better to recapitulate what we said regarding what a teacher should do. A teacher has to stimulate students to think, to respond, and to contribute their ideas. A teacher should make mid-course corrections and provide guidance and direction for the case discussion. To focus the points covered by different students, it is necessary to make use of the board and list the points and the ideas contributed by the students. Lastly, it is necessary to provide an orderly summary of the total discussion and to give as a strategy finally for the benefit of one and all who participated in the discussion. We observe certain common errors in case analysis. Let me now list some of the common errors that we come across in the case discussion. Making inappropriate assumptions is normally seen in the case discussion. There may be a need to make some assumptions. Sometimes, for some reason or the other, the cases may not have all the data, all the information required, and the students may have to make some assumptions, but those assumptions should be consistent and relevant. The second important is that generalizations would be made by the participants, which should not be the case. Facts of the case should govern them, and facts are sacred, and facts and opinions given in the case should be the basis for case discussion, and generalization should not be resorted to. Cliches, overemphasizing certain aspect should be avoided by the students, and students should not suggest miracle cures for any decision or to solve any problem. It is important to remember and question what is wrong than questioning who is wrong. Blaming somebody would not solve the problem. Identifying the systemic deficiency is important. Sometimes students also make unrealistic assumptions or unrealistic solutions they suggest, they must avoid. There is a tendency to suggest either this or that. Ultimately, the case analysis should end with one suggestion, one strategy, one decision and one solution, and hence either or on the other hand syndromes should be avoided by the students in the case analysis. It is often debated that can we replace lecture method with the case method. The debate according to me is unwarranted. The reason is that lecture method has its own value, its own benefits, its own utility. Similarly, case method also has its own benefits and its own utility. For certain subjects, case method can be used very successfully, whereas for certain other subjects, lecture method can be used predominantly. The question of replacing lecture method will not arise, because the blend of or the mix of lecture method and the case method would provide excellent teaching learning strategy based on the nature of the subject, type of course, level of course, and the complexity of the subject. For subjects like organizational science, organizational behavior, marketing management, human resource management, strategic management, the case method of learning would be a great success. For courses like quantitative methods, accountancy, operations research, and the courses of that sort, problem solving exercises and lecture method would help the learners to understand the subject better and to comprehend it in a better way than it is otherwise.
ఈ కార్యక్రమంపై మీ అమూల్యమైన అభిప్రాయాల్ని ఆహ్వానిస్తున్నాం. మా చిరునామా ది డైరెక్టర్, ఆడియో విజువల్ ప్రొడక్షన్ అండ్ రీసెర్చ్ సెంటర్, డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ, ప్రొఫెసర్ జి రామ్ రెడ్డి మార్క్, రోడ్ నంబర్ 46, జూబ్లీ హిల్స్, హైదరాబాద్ 500033.